Okay. Alright, everybody, we are back. I think I have fixed my problems. Let me make sure I have fixed my problems. Why are you like this? Okay, it all appears good. Oh, that is blurry as all get out. But it's not actually blurry. It's just blurry over there. Well, that's lovely. Oh, no, I'm a slideshow again. Okay, well, I'm going to be showing a slideshow anyway, so our choices are I'm a little janky. I don't know why it's doing this. It's healthy, it's not healthy, it's acting up. Why are you doing this to me? Why? Everything was fantastic until the Fire Nation attacked. Okay, I'm going to attempt to do this. If it is absolutely terrible and I start getting, like, YouTube yelling at me more than it already is. Why is it already yelling at me? It's not receiving enough. Okay. The only other thing I have... Hello? Are you working? Why are you being dumb? Hang on. That was supposed to fix the problem, not make me disappear. And did it work? Yes, that appears to have worked fine. Okay, well, that's fantastic, I guess. Except this still says YouTube is being silly. Okay, so I have one what is this? I have one data source saying everything's fine. I have one data source saying everything is awful. I don't know who to believe. If anyone is wondering, YouTube is the one saying everything is awful. And OBS is saying everything is perfect. Now. I just want to talk about a thing, man. I just want to talk about books. What is wrong with you? Why are you not working? Why is this still saying that? That's not true. Cancel? Exit? No, that's not what I wanted. Go back here. And then... It's being... It's fine. Alright. If I don't touch it again... Alright, we are about to go on my wonderful rabbit hole of the PowerPoint, and we are not going to look at the YouTube screen again, because every time I look at it, it goes wrong. I don't know what's happening. This is a first, guys. I am very sorry about the broken slideshow that was my previous attempt. So we're trying this again, a whole half hour late. Hi! I hope you have a good evening. This should be relaxing, if not a little panicked, because I was trying to fix a problem that I didn't know I had until I had it. We are talking about Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. This is a adult fiction. I don't have my stuff up, do I? This is what happens when everything goes wrong. Is I forget my basic format, which includes, having a presentation to show you. This is meant to entertain and inform. I do not own any of the copyright to either the books or the covers. Let's see how this goes. Yeah. Okay. And since my cursor is always dumb, we're just going to assume it's going to be dumb and start there. We're talking about assassins. We're talking about Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. So true story. Both Chrysister and one of my very good friends adore everything by Robin Hobb, and this was what I was given to start with. And so this is where I started. I will give my opinions on this as a starting point at a later part of this. It is adult fantasy as opposed to the children's or teen young adult that I have primarily covered. And it's less for, well, it's not for content. But honestly, it's the pacing. And maybe that's incorrect of me, but most adult fantasy is a little closer to a snail's pace than a gallop. That's mean, but accurate. It was originally published by Bantam Spectra in 1995. It is part of a series. It is the first book in the Farseer trilogy. The Farseer okay, from what I understand of Robin Hobb, is that most of her books are in the same world, and most of her books are connected. So this is a first book in a series. It's a perfectly acceptable place to start. But chronologically, it may not be the first. I didn't look into that. I am the weirdo who give me the publication order as opposed to the in-world chronological order, but excuse me, that's what this is. See, I fixed all these problems and now I'm tired. See, this is what happens. I solve problems, I get tired. Things. All right. Oh, that is very hot coffee. Okay. Let's try not to burn myself as I try to stay awake. Here is the original cover for Assassin's Apprentice. Did I say the Sorcerer's Apprentice earlier? I meant Assassin's Apprentice. Man, it's a day. The cover artist for this is Michael Whelan, who has worked for over 40 years in sci-fi fantasy as a sci-fi fantasy illustrator with over 15 Hugo Awards. If you're looking for a comparison, those are pretty much sci-fi fantasies. Oscars, basically. Tony Awards, Oscars, that kind of thing. He has created book covers for authors including Isaac Asimov, Anne McCaffrey, Stephen King, and Brandon Sanderson. He is the first living artist to be inducted into the Science Fiction Hall of Fame. And you will notice a trend in that many of the cover artists are in this zone for this book in particular. This gentleman in particular, he is responsible for basically most of the 90s adult fantasy covers having the vibe they did. This cover right here is a really good example of it. But this was kind of the vibe of most fantasy covers, especially for aimed at adults in the 90s. And this is the man who made it that way. The bright, striking colors, the semi-realistic. Well, it's realistic, but it's fantastical. People, the detailed architecture, that is all very much him. So he did the original cover for the Spectra. Here are two 2014 covers. The one on the left is by Harper Voyager. The artist is Jackie Morris, who is a artist and writer of children's books, who lives in Wales. And a lot of her stuff is think birds and a bit of whimsy and otters, and it's all a lot of fun. It's all very pretty, very watercolory. And then on the right is the cover I I own the book, by Alejandro Colucci. I'm not quite sure how to pronounce his last name. He is an award-winning artist who's created covers for authors such as Anne Rice, H.G. Wells, and Ursula K. Le Guin. Very much in the same vein as the original cover. Original cover artist, I should say. What was that? He is... Hang on a second, guys. Give me just a second. Sorry about that. Weird noises. Similar to the first artist, he is prolific and has done many works for authors, whether they are living or deceased. Yes, so the one on the right is the cover that I had. Also, so because this was written in 1995, there was a 25-year anniversary edition for this, and as I was doing some poking around for this to get all of the information I needed, especially on the author. I'm so sorry. I keep thinking I hear things. I'm going crazy. Especially to get things on the author, I found out there was a very nice 25th anniversary edition. I wasn't able to tell if it was an illustrated edition or if there was a graphic novel, maybe both, maybe one. But that makes me very happy. I'm always delighted when novels turn into graphic novels because it gives a whole different interpretation. Because the change of medium makes a huge difference. For example, I own The Graveyard Book in both novel and graphic novel form. And now that I've clicked somewhere else, there we go. So about the author, this seems very sparse, but Robin Hobb is an American author who lives in the Pacific Northwest. She also writes under the name of Megan Lindholm. So she has written the Farseer trilogy. She's written the Tawnyman series, or Tawnyman trilogy, the Rain Wilds Chronicles, Fitz and the Fool. So a lot of stories in the same world. I didn't look into what she wrote under Megan Lindholm, but she also writes under that name. Per her website, she's just folks. I mean, her biography on there is tiny, tiny, tiny. And what seems to be more important is the FAQs and then the blog. So if you do just want to uh, read that, it's a delight to poke through just to look. Um, like I said, she just seems folks. Um, I will go ahead and say here before I move on, this book pacing for speed of reading is very slow. It is very slow to start. Think like snowflakes falling, slow to start, and then um, very slowly you actually start to get a snowball, and it starts rolling. And by the last two chapters, it's an avalanche, and you do not want to put it down because holy paper cranes, things are happening, and you love them. That being said, you do have to get through the beginning, and I will address that. What do you need to know? It has a noodly plot. It does get better. If you are not, if you don't enjoy flashbacks, if you don't enjoy flash forwards, if you don't enjoy very subtle time skips that are of a significant period of time, maybe Robin Hobb is not for you. From what I understand, many of her novels have flashbacks at the beginning of chapters, which is part of what this one has. So that is a thing. It also contributes to this being such a slow start, is because you've got flashbacks from the future that are flashing back to before this begins. So yeah. Political machinations. I hate it in fantasy, but it's here. I will talk about it. Learning a trade, obviously the name of the book. And then animals play a very important role in this. Your main character is Fitz. Fitz is the illegitimate son of king-in-waiting Prince Chivalry. It is implied very early on that he has both wit and skill. Wit and skill, again, this is the first Robin Hobb book I've ever read, so we will start there. Any huge Robin Hobb fans, please take this with a grain of salt. I have only read this one, so I can only give speculation about what these things are, and that is coming from what I've read in this book. Wit appears to be a magical ability and connection with animals, and skill is kind of the same with humans. I can't tell if it's exactly the same, but it is similar, but with humans instead. It's think for any D&D people, think of your typical bard spells, suggestion, friends, those kind of spells. Think that is the skill, basically. The other fun thing that I will mention on this page, since it is apparent, is that nobility in general and the royal family in particular are virtue named. Again, if you're looking at D&D, think tieflings. They are virtue named, so you have things like King Shrewd, Prince Chivalry, Prince Regal, the other prince. Hang on, other prince. Other prince is a terrible name. What is other prince's name? Verity. That's his name. Prince Verity. Which is fine. It really is. Except sometimes you have to remember that these capitalized real words are names. For me, it's not a problem. But sometimes I miss it because they'll start a sentence and it's like, oh yeah, that's capitalized. And I'm like, oh wait, that's not chivalry the thing, that's chivalry the person. Whoopsie. And when you encounter characters who are familiar with characters and therefore don't put honorifics on, it can get a little confusing. And then you have characters who don't have names. You have the Fool is the main one, but then when Fitz was a child, it starts them as a child, but when he was a child, he didn't always have the names of people and animals. It was sometimes just attributes. And to be fair, you learn that the man who helped man who helped raise him, did name the animals with attributes a lot. A la the royals. Alright, so the noodly plot. This is not a criticism, this is just an observation. Good grief, now I have hiccups, you guys. First I have tech problems. Then I have weird noises, and now I have hiccups. This is not my night. So it's a noodly plot. This isn't necessarily a bad thing. It is an observation, though, and like I said, it's not for everybody. There are flashbacks from the future into the past, beyond where the story is, or slightly ahead of where your story is. So sometimes the flashbacks serve as a bridge between the end of one chapter and the beginning of the other. Sometimes the flashbacks serve as your time skip. There's a handful of those where the flashback is a historical account of something that happens that you don't actually see in the book, but time passes, things happen. Excuse me. This isn't for everyone. The other thing is that in the beginning he's a child, and so you've got the flashbacks at the chapter beginnings. You've got a child's perspective, so unreliable at best. And it's very much stream of consciousness especially for that part. So it's just kind of all over the place. It's less all over the place as he grows up, predictably. It will slow you down. Excuse me. Like I said, I was supposed to talk about this one last time, but I couldn't get through it. This is not a 400-page novel of fluff. This is a very dense, excuse me, meal of pages. This is not cotton candy that just dissolves. I am so sorry, you guys. What is with tonight? This is just a very dense story. It's a good story, it's just very dense. I said I wasn't gonna look at that again, and I did. So that is what is going on with the plot without spoiling anything. I am so sorry. Give me just a minute. I'm gonna see if I can. This coffee is so hot. It's gonna burn my tongue. I'm gonna see if burning my tongue helps get rid of the hiccups. We'll see. We will see if that. Nope. Alright, so my least favorite thing in fantasy novels is political machinations. Nope. Jeez Louise. Hiccups, man. So the book is primarily based in the capital. You arrive at the capital very early in the story. So your politics of the land is just baked in. Also, while it is a character-driven story, the events happen, if that makes sense, in a very plot-driven story kind of way. So that's a thing. If you like that kind of thing, if you like the political posturing and maneuvering and what makes a good prince and what makes a good king, and how does being a good king make you a good person, and can you be a good person and a good king? This book, maybe not. Also, considering who Fitz is, there's no real avoiding You can't have the illegitimate son of the heir to the throne running around and not have the politics of the royal family play in. At the beginning of this book, his father, Chivalry, is the only one married, and it was a marriage of love, not a marriage of politics. So that's a scandal. And then his brother and half brother are not married, but are very much present and aware of things. Jeez Louise. Oh. This stream is a mess, you guys. I'm sorry. It is primarily about learning a trade. Not in that's the focus of the book, but that is what Fitz is doing. He does learn multiple trades. One would be the name of the book, Assassin's Apprentice. It goes into different teaching methods, different teaching attitudes shown by multiple characters, both the teachers and as other students. Not all of the lessons have other students, but most of them do. I say that most of them do. And you get a pretty fair account from Fitz. So he'll tell you when he doesn't like a person, and you can choose for yourself, well, how is that affecting how he's describing them? How can I yawn and hiccup at the same time, guys? I feel like those should be the antithesis. I could look up and say pink elephants a bunch. Oh, pink elephants, pink elephants. Nope. Dang it. It was worth a try. But you see Fitz with multiple teachers. One of those teachers is the man who raises him. Who is Burrich, he was Chivalry's man, and then Chivalry abdicates. Very, very early he abdicates, and it creates kind of the perfect storm for the political machinations, in addition to raiders, because it's one of those of the Six Duchies, which is the kingdom you're looking at, has that wonderful problem that any mixed coastal inland area has, where the inland people are like, why should we support the navy? And the coastal people are like, help. We have the merchant ships that keep getting robbed that get you the things that you want. Excuse me. And so that's kind of the push and pull. But Burrich is the stable master seems a little small for what he does, but it's the easiest way to describe it. And speaking of stables, the animals are very important. They're as important as the people, because the stables is where Fitz was raised, and B, because the wit is an ability with animals. So the other thing is that because he is raised by the stable master, because he is raised around so many animals, a lot of things you will notice at sometimes things that Fitz will say, he will talk about how people handle their animals, whether or not animals like them. At what point he mentions that a man ruins the mouth of every horse he rides, and is very against that man because of that. So how people treat and interact with either their animals or just animals in general, it's a reoccurring thing. It's not a guarantee of who's an ally and who's an enemy, because people can be nice to animals and be terrible to people. But Fitz has a connection with animals, in a way most people don't. So he takes how they treat their animals into consideration with whether or not he likes them, and whether or not he believes them, and whether or not he trusts them. All of that is connected. So, recommendations. You are going to see a lot of repeat authors today. I would apologize, except some of these overlap. So, let's talk about that. Learning a trade. I started with The Sheepherder's Daughter. I have mentioned this one before. It is part of the Deed of Paxenarian by Elizabeth Moon. It is the first book, although it is easier to find the omnibus. So, if you are looking for this and are ready for a big, dense book, the Deed of Paxenarian is the 3 books in one. The trade she learns is military. Excuse me. She learns how to be a soldier in an infantry company. Mercenary company. That's what it's called in this book. She's a soldier in a mercenary company. She does have to learn right from the start. No knowledge of it. And it deals with kind of the gritty of it, as well as war and training and friendships and lies and misogyny. There's a lot here. There are a lot of good characters. There's a lot of questionable characters. There's a lot of characters that you desperately want to be bad, and they're just mean. Not bad, just mean. But it is about learning a trade. The Ruins of Gorlian is the first book in The Ranger's Apprentice by John Flanagan. Jeez. By John Flanagan. It is exactly what it says on the tin. It is The Ranger's Apprentice. It is about Will? I want to say his name is Will. I have not read it in a while. I do remember it being an absolute blast. He has to learn a lot. Being a ranger is more than just shooting a bow, and he learns that very quickly. Sandry's book by Tamora Pierce it's a foreign one in, not foreign, for the number 4 in the number 1. In that you have 4 main characters. Jeez Louise. You have 4 main characters. And they all have to learn a new trade for various reasons. For one, because the trade was not considered acceptable for a noble to follow. Another, because thievery was the trade before, and he was given another chance, and so must learn a new trade. One, craftsmanship was not the trade. Merchant was the trade. And the final one, because if she doesn't learn self-control, she will kill people. She's my favorite. But it is the first book in the Circle of Magic by Tamora Pierce. The kids are great. I adore them. Sandra is one of them. I'm not telling you which one. The next one, I will admit, fits the bill. It is not a book I enjoy, but that does not mean it is not well written. Crystal Singer by Anne McCaffrey is about Kilishandra, who does in fact learn the trade of singing crystal, and all that entails. I find her a dislikable character. She is very proud. She is very full of herself. That being said, hola! That being said, it is not an inherently bad book. You missed all of the scuff. If you've noticed, there are 2 streams with this name. The first one is just troubleshooting that then I didn't manage to fix, and then I managed to fix it at the beginning of this one. Yeah. I think I'm gonna just rename that one the Scuff Startup or something. Oh Jeez. Also, I now have both hiccups and yawns at the same time. I don't know how I have this. Um, so this is one of those rare times where I'm like, I will recommend this book. I do not enjoy it because not. It's not a bad book. Somebody will enjoy it. It's just not me. Crystal Singer is not my book. It is very music focused. That's nice. It's very sci-fi. That's okay. That's part of why I don't like it. I'm not a sci-fi person. But it is about learning a trade. It would be inaccurate of me to say it's not. And then my final recommendation are books where animals are important. So this is not like last time where I was talking about animal books like Silverwing. No, this is books where animals are important. There's going to be a fun little caveat in these two. So My Side of the Mountain by Gene Craighead George is about a boy who lives in a tree on a mountain by himself, and he goes and kidnaps a peregrine falcon. Yeah, that feels the most accurate way to put it. And raises it because he was getting sick because he wasn't eating protein because he was living in a tree. He still lives in the tree with the peregrine falcon. But she is very important to the story, so that's why. Dragon Song by Anne McCaffrey is about a Holdkeeper's daughter named Minnie, and about fire lizards, which are these weird things that are supposed to be just fairy stories and extinct, and surprise, they're not. So they are very important in this. Without completely ruining the plot of Dragon Song, it's good fun. This is an Anne McCaffrey that I absolutely adored. Very much fantasy, not sci-fi. I adore the Harpercraft Hall trilogy, and this is one of those. So number 2 here is, or the next one, I can count. I promise I can count. The next is Bloodhound by Tamora Pierce. This is book 2 in a trilogy. Like, big old red lights. It is book 2 in a trilogy, but it does involve a dog named Achu Curly Paws. She is sweet. I love her. She is wonderful. She is a scent hound, and so the entire Becca Cooper series, Terrier, Bloodhound, Mastiff, have to do with detective work, police work, in fantasy police, in the Lord Provost's Guard. So she is a scent hound for the Lord Provost's Guard and winds up being very much a friend of Becca. And then The Halfling's Gem by R.A. Salvatore is the first book in the Icewind Dale trilogy, primarily featuring Dritsta Uden, but he has friends. Importantly, he has a panther named Gwenhwyvar, who is magic, and I love her, and she comes out of a statuette, and she is glorious and wonderful. So all of these are more about animals as friends and companions and partners, rather than just like animal books. And all of these are animals that can't just be replaced with another animal. Yeah. So, after all that stuff, I basically ran through this because I felt bad. So yes, it was Assassin's Apprentice, which I know I recommended before, in the before times. I hadn't read it. I just knew anybody I knew who had read Robin Hobb loved Robin Hobb, so it was a safe recommendation. So this is one of those books that I recommended before I read it, and now I have read it, and I will continue to recommend it. I did say I would make a comment about reading this one first. I have been told that these are not the best books to start with. Not because they're not good, but because they're slow. They are very much, it is very much building the foundation of the world, which isn't a bad thing. Fellowship of the Ring helps build the foundation for the Two Towers and the Return of the King, sure. But her living ships, what is it? The Live Ship Traders, has like sassy boats. I have been told that the sassy boats are fabulous, and that if you are into semi-sentient boats, that might be where you want to start. It will be slow. It will be convoluted to an extent, but yes, sassy boats. I think my sister said they're like made out of dragons, like long dead dragons got turned into sassy boats somehow, and they're like have some of their personality from when they were dragons, so that's why they're sassy boats. So there are more books in this trilogy. Obviously it's a trilogy, that kind of continue from where this one left off. I will say I hope they go back a bit. Oh, the other thing I need to mention now, or I will forget it. Robin Hobb. Robin Hobb knows how to use an epilogue effectively. So, for the record, I complained about Violet Made of Thorns, where the ending felt twisted and forced and maybe shoehorning in a sequel. It very much felt that way. This is the exact opposite. It leaves plenty of dangling threads. At the end of the final chapter, there's some dangling threads. There's some that are all tied up nice and neat. There's some that are completed but may, crinkle later. And then in like the page and a half of epilogue, she throws in all of these hypothetical things that sound really cool, and you're like, where's that story? I want to read that one too. It's like, that is how you use an epilogue. You finish your story, you leave some open roads that are still satisfying in their openness, and then you tease the living daylights out of what sounds like some fantastic times. Yeah. So Robin Hobb clearly knows how to use an epilogue most efficiently, and it doesn't feel like it should have been part of the story. It really does feel like an epilogue. It's the same as yes you do. It's the same as when a book ends and says, here's the first few pages of the next book. It feels like that. It feels like you've been given, like, someone has lifted the curtain just a little and you can see the actors' feet running around. And you're like, what are they doing? I want to know. Can I know now? No, you can't. You need the next book. But it's a lot of fun. It's a very effective use of an epilogue. If you want to know the other books in this trilogy, it is The Assassin's Apprentice, which is this one, and then Royal Assassin, and then Assassin's Quest. I would say it's all the ones that say assassin, but she has more books about assassins. So Robin Hobb writes assassins. No, she writes what is very clearly some well-built fantasy. Even though she does go a lot into like the history of the kingdoms and like some of the like boring parts of world building, it's not problematic. Um, I mean, Anne McCaffrey does that too. Tamora Pierce does that to a lesser extent. Uh, R.A. Salvatore sort of does, but he's playing in someone else's sandbox, so he gets a bit of a pass because he's in the D&D Forgotten Realms. Um, so that is that. Um, I would say this book is, despite the fact that it's about assassins, I would say I probably could have read it in middle school. Um, it's really hard to gauge, but it was like um, most of the most of the adult things were typically violence or death, and like I was reading Lord of the Rings and the Redwall books, and let me tell you, Redwall for having sentient mice does not skimp on death at all. Um, Although some of them hit harder than others. It's just very slow to start. And like I said, that's not a detriment. It's just an objective fact. Um, I will admit, I will be going back to another YA for the next one. Uh, and it's a retelling, but that's literally all I know about it. It was just like this one was given as a to me as a gift and highly recommended. The next one is also a gift and highly recommended. Um, so, uh, that is the Assassin's Apprentice. Um, I was trying to think if there were any other like apprenticey books, like or books of similar. How do I get this to go away? There we go. This is not my night with technology. Or books with a similar kind of feel. Um, it's hard to say because it's a bit like if Tolkien and Tamora Pierce got mixed together, you would get Robin Hobb because it has the very slow, very thorough world building of Tolkien, um, but with the like knowledge and ability of writing action scenes and people that that Tamora Pierce has. I guess that is something to say if you like analyzing people, not necessarily psychoanalyzing them, but just like seeing a people as a people, it's a very good book for that. You get a wide variety and a nice dynamic. Um, Also, if you like dogs, this is both the best and worst book ever. um, that's fair warning in and of itself. It is very good, but also, yeah. Yep. Yep, yep, yep. You missed the part where I explained that Fitz has a ability that allows him to connect with animals. So, yeah. Although not birds, I did find that very interesting. So he was raised by a man who dealt with all of Prince Chivalry's animals. his hounds, his horses, and his birds, and his hawks. All the H's. Um, and apparently Fitz is bad with the birds because he's not cold enough. And I just find that fascinating because it implies that, unlike the skill that seems to just work with all people, it implies that the wit, which is the magic relating to animals, is a bit more specialized to the person. Oh, you missed that part. I'm so sorry. So the royal family has virtue names. No, no, it's all of them. The royal family has virtue names. You've got Prince Chivalry, who is the king in waiting before he abdicates. You've got King Shrewd, who is the current king. You've got Prince Verity, and you've got Prince Regal. Yeah. They all have virtue names, and that is a thing. History does not know whether they are given those names because they are destined to be those things, or if they are given those things because those are the things that they lack. Oh, don't sigh. It's only confusing sometimes. It's only confusing sometimes, and then they talk about like past kings, and you're like, King Bounty. Oh, right. That's a name. Does it sound fake? Absolutely. Look, if you own this book, you can absolutely flip it over and read on the back, and like right there on the back in the first line it says Noble Prince Chivalry. So we should not be surprised by these names. It's not a bad naming convention, it's just confusing. Especially since there's no guarantee that because you have that name, you are that quality. Um, there is a lady named Patience who several people say she lacks that quality. Yeah. Um, yeah, Prince Chivalry. Well, and there's a couple of nobles that I don't think are part of the royal line. It's never said that they are. Um, but they also have that kind of naming convention. Um, yeah. And then you have the Fool, who doesn't have a name. He's just called the Fool. I'm sure he has a name, but no one knows it except for him, probably. Maybe. He doesn't say. It's not quite Hunchback of Notre Dame in that what makes a man and what makes a beast kind of question. Um, I will admit I have suspicions, but this is supposed to be spoiler free, so I will not go into what some of those suspicions are about both Fitz and his abilities, because they don't come out fully in this book. If you were expecting a grand like Gandalf fighting the Balrog moment in this, that doesn't happen. This is not about training and then surpassing your master kind of thing. This is more becoming competent. So it's less of becoming a master and more of going from an apprentice to a journeyman. Or even a novice to an apprentice. That might be the more fair thing. You go from knowing absolutely nothing to knowing enough to be dangerous. Also, I just realized. I wonder if there's a way for me to do this. Hang on. Can I add um don't know if I can. I may have to make my own scuff stream some later time to see how to do that. Okay, well, let's leave that alone. It's not broken, let's not break it. I've already had enough scuffs this night. What else? The politics are weird. And I think that's mostly because they're viewed through the eyes of a child and then a teenager. Oh, the time skips. Time skips are typically covered in like one sentence. It's like, and time passes, or then, and months later I looked back on this time and blah blah blah. Or in the future I would see this to blah 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 blah. Because there's a framing sequence to it. I don't want to spoil it all here, but there is a framing sequence type thing, sort of. It relates to the flashbacks. But the time skips, you don't get like, and 30 years passed. No. But you do go from child to like teen-ish, preteen-ish. No, I guess he's a teenager. It's hard when the kid doesn't know his own age. I will say that. But there's a pretty blasé time skip of, yeah, some time passed and then I was no longer 7 or young or a child. And then I was told I couldn't be a small child anymore, and so I had to not be a child. So, if those kind of time skips aren't your thing, just, there's not a ton of them, so you don't jump from like child to teen to 30-year-old man to 60-year-old man. That's not what's happening. But there's a few. You don't get a day-by-day play of his life all the time. Sometimes you're like, and over the weeks, XYZ happened. And it's like, oh, you're not going to go into detail, are you? No. Because you don't always need to go into detail in this. You just need to know the general shape of what happened. So, I was going to say, because he's an illegitimate child, because you're set, at Buck's Keep. Buck's Keep? Hang on. It's the 6 duchies, and your capital, I want to say, is Buck's Keep. That's the name that's stuck in my head, but I might be wrong. There's no S. It's just Buckkeep. This is why I have the book on hand when I talk about it, is so I can look things up really fast. And there's a map at the beginning, so I knew I could find it fast. That is why you see a lot of the maneuvering. You can't avoid it. There's one part where he's like, oh, I was so stuck in my mind I didn't notice the gossip. And I'm like, how? How did you not notice the gossip in the capital? How did you miss this? You are in the center of the kingdom and are tied to the royal family. But yes, that is a interesting thing. Most of the time he is aware of some of the gossip, but there is at one point he is not, and then he's like, how did I miss this? This is so important. And I'm like, yeah, how did you miss this? This is big news for everyone? Everyone. I will say, if I had the wit, you better believe it would be with cats. Absolutely. Me and cats. I mean, I wouldn't mind having the wit with birds, but I feel like you can those two are either too similar and so you would have them with both, or they're too much predator and prey situation and you couldn't have them with both. Um but yes, give me the magical connection to cats. I would be delighted. I would be absolutely delighted to have a magical connection with cats. um like I said, the next book I will be covering will be another retelling instead of. Yes. Yes. See, this magical connection thing is great, actually. I mean, there are some drawbacks. There always are. Um, but it would be fabulous because that's part of the thing is that he kind of. How do I explain this without spoiling things? So it's he can feel sensations through them, but he also the more he connects with them, the more they can like mentally speak as opposed to just give impressions. It's the difference between uh all right, we're going nerdy D&D again. It's the difference between a pseudo dragon that can give images and vague emotions, and a and someone casting the sending spell where they're sending you a 25-word message, which may or may not make sense, but it will in fact be words and a message. um, So yeah, it's one of those of the more you do a thing, the stronger it gets, the more you get out of a thing. And to be fair, that's basically how the skill works too, with people. Oh, I was. It's a retelling. That's what I was gonna say. Is that next time's book is a. It's not a retelling. I think it's a reimagining. Hang on. Let me grab it right quick. Let me see. Book. How do you qualify yourself? How do you qualify yourself? Book. It's a reimagining. It's a sci-fi twist on on stuff. Which may be very spoilerific, and you may be able to figure out what I'm reading based off of that. But that is what I will be reading for next time. Hopefully, I will be able to read it in a timely manner, and I will not have to grab another 200-page children's book and try to shove that in the middle. I do have several, but as I learned last time, the shorter the book is, the harder it is for me to talk about as long. Which, to be fair, is kind of my problem today, but I did have scuff. Like, I have a half hour of just me troubleshooting on a different stream. Oh. That's not really an excuse. I would feel very bad if that was included. I may not add that to the actual. So I made a playlist. If you haven't taken a look, or if you've missed anything, or if you want to re-listen or whatever, I did make a playlist in order from. It should be in order from the oldest to newest. Um, I will probably not put my put my scuffs thing on there, but it does mean that if you would like to listen, you can. So far, I've only managed to make it to 2 hours once, so you're looking at an hour to an hour and a half for most of them. And even this one is probably not making it to 2 hours because I had a half hour of problems. Um, but so there is now a playlist if you would like that. Um, if you wouldn't like it, it's still there. Congratulations, I'm Henri. No, I'm Lady Chryseus. I'm not Henri. Um, what else? What else? What else? I have started, like, no promises of when they're going to get done. I have one started. It's not a they yet. It's a one. Anyway, um, but as much as my lovely derpy face is delightful, I've noticed that a lot of the thumbnails are very samey. So I have started. Like I said, no promise of even when this first one is getting done. I have started working on thumbnails, so we can actually differentiate these poor fools. Like, they have titles, I promise. That's the easiest way, but a different image may be helpful as well. I will probably double those as a way to actually post a schedule, as boring as that will be. It'll be 1 week on, 1 week off. But it's a easy way to check. So I am working on that. It is very slow going, partially because I'm not very good at the whole digital art thing. So I'm using a mouse. I have a little Wacom. I don't understand it, so I'm using a mouse. um, so that's part of it, and also part of it is just me getting distracted by other things. But so those are in the works. The goal is to very slowly fill it in, so that my thumbnails are not just me doing this, which is what a lot of them are. I think that's the most exciting news I have, is that I am working on on doing thumbnails. Look, it's really confusing to just, if you're not reading, shocker, but if you're just looking for a thing by thumbnail and all of them are just me going, that maybe you are confused about which one of these me's you have already watched or listened to. Like, with some of these, you don't need to watch me, you can just listen. Nope, coffee's still hot. Coffee is still very hot. Although the hiccups seem to have finally gone away, so bonus. I'm trying to think. So other things that are, like, related tangentially to this. I don't think this is the only book I've read about assassins, but off the top of my head, I can't come up with another one, which is very strange. Actually, I can, but it's not about the assassin. That sounds so convoluted. So, let's talk for a second about a very long series that I mentioned earlier tonight, and because it has a cat. Drizzt Do'Urden, The Legend of Drizzt. The Icewind Dale trilogy came first, but Homeland, Exile, and Sojourn are chronologically first. Homeland is much more boring though, so maybe read the exciting ones and then go back and fill in his backstory. Anyway, in wait, I put the wrong book in the thing. I mean, I just realized I absolutely put the wrong book in this. Hang on, I have to fix that. I have to fix that now because it will bother me forever. Hang on. Hold. I feel really dumb. Hang on. Where is this? Alright, y'all want to see what a dummy I am? Let's take a look at what a dummy I am. This one? Yeah. No. This one. Hey. Alright, fun fact. This right here is the Halfling's Gem. You know what this is not? This is not the first book in the Icewind Dale trilogy. It's the third book in the Icewind Dale trilogy. The Crystal Shard. This is book 3. Hang on. Just kidding. JK. Book 3. Yeah, hi, hello. Apparently I am dumb tonight. All the dumb. I was making this and I'm like, I don't need to pull open my book. I know which one of these came first. Apparently not. So the Crystal Shard is the first book in the Icewind Dale trilogy. The Halfling's Gem is the book where the assassin shows up. Fun fact. The really cool assassin shows up in the Halfling's Gem. Or at the end of Streams of Silver. He shows up in the Icewind Dale trilogy. He does not show up in the Crystal Shard. He shows up after the Crystal Shard. The Crystal Shard is the first book. To be fair, they both have Gwenhwyvar in them. So they do both have the cat. So I wasn't wrong in that the Halfling's Gem has the cat. But it is in fact book 3, not book 1, because I am dumb, apparently. Oh, jeez. Sorry about that. I can't believe I just, like, something in my brain went off and was like, the assassin shows up in the Halfling's Gem. The assassin is not in the first book. What is the first book? Jeez. You guys, some days I am very dumb. Some days I am very dumb. So, yeah, that's a thing. But what I was going to say, so that the assassin shows up a lot. Well, not a lot, but he shows up multiple times. He's very cool. He is not good. He's an assassin. But he is very cool. And then there are a couple other books I've read that have assassins not as main characters, but as, like, important characters later. I mean, if you want to get really technical, Kith and Kin had a rogue, and I don't remember if he winds up being assassin subclass in the actual game, but, like, daggers and stabs, man. He's not exactly a good in that sense. So yeah, there are several books about assassins. just label this one to Chryseus being silly and forgetting her books. Okay. Now that I feel justified, I can turn this back off and pretend I didn't have a panic attack where I'm like, wait, no, book's wrong. Look, I don't want to give y'all bad information on the books, because then you'll be like, but you said. I'm like, I'm so sorry I said that. I was dumb. Allow me to correct myself. So I have this one. I have next week? No, not next week. I have next time. And then the one after. And then the one after that. So, okay, there's going to be 3 more books. So the next 3. And then for the last September one, I'm going to officially start spooky season, which is only going to be 3 books. But I already know what they are. All of them will be rereads for me. One of them is I have to go get again. But that is the plan, is that because of how I have scheduled this and only doing every other week, to do the most spooky season as possible, it will be the last one of these in September, and then the 2 in October, unless I have mathed wrong again. I don't think I have. I think I have mathed correctly. But that should be how this all shakes out. Yeah, look, I normally like math, but sometimes math is hard. Especially when it's like calendars and time, because neither of those things are like nice and simple. Oh yes, you have 100 seconds. Well, that's not a minute. But it's also not 2 minutes. Yeah. But yes, spooky season. So the goal is one is going to be vibes, spooky vibes. One is going to be a actual shoveling is so great. So for the record, anyone who ever needs to write a paper, first of all, know your subject, and then if you need to make up the word count, absolute fluff and shovel, because sometimes what you need to say, you can say in way less words than the professors or teachers want. So learn how to stretch your things out, with lovely, lovely purple prose until it is the desired length. Because sometimes the whole point of your thing is like, Ophelia is dumb, and you can say that very quickly, and then you're like, if I turned in a paper that was like 4 lines long that says, in summary, in conclusion, Ophelia is dumb, that's unacceptable. So if you learn how to stretch it out. So one of them is going to be vibes, spooky vibes. One of them is going to be a monster story, and then one of them is going to be a children's novel, that I've already mentioned once tonight. I've mentioned it multiple times in the past. But yeah, it's fun spooks. I think I'm doing that one closest to Halloween. I don't know. It depends on if the monster story takes longer to read than I think it will. It shouldn't. I've read it before. I know it. But that is my plan for spooky season. I haven't quite figured out what I'm doing for November, December. I have one thing in mind, but obviously I need more than one. Um, yes, my suggestion, yeah, as far as paper writing goes, my suggestion is stretch it out. Um, Especially if you're look, real talk. If you are analyzing a poem, first of all, take as much from the poem as you can without running into like the whole copyright problem. Second of all, defend yourself and don't make circular arguments because look, your professors can put up with a lot. Circular arguments get annoying. Um, if you're going to make a circular argument, make sure you cut yourself off before you go in the circle. Just imply the circularness. Um, and when all else fails, compare it to something else. Like that is the bread and butter of analyzing poetry. Pull as much out of the poem as humanly possible. Try not to do completely circular arguments because your professors are in fact smart and will have seen circular arguments before. And when in doubt, compare it to something else. Or just absolutely shock your professor. That shock factor is not to be denied. um What? They haven't figured out how to do poetry yet? Like analyzing poetry is the easy part because for the most part the interpretation is up to the reader. Unless you've run into the classes where the interpretation is the teacher's opinion. Oh, all of these images of dogwood are in fact religious images. Well, maybe they're just trees. That is a valid interpretation. They could just be trees. But yes. I don't think all poems are literal, but I do think some of them are. I do think in some cases, injecting your own meaning is a little silly, but it can mean that to you and not mean that to the author. That's valid. Death of the author and all that. Um, no, so yeah, analyzing poetry. I don't believe I'm talking about this, but analyzing poetry is really not. It may be time consuming. I will say that. It may be time consuming, but it's not really hard. Um, if you like the poem, it's typically easier because you're more likely to have some pistons fire in your brain that are like, oh, this reminds me of that. Cool. Take that, make a whole paragraph out of this reminds me of that. Um, that's another thing. If you were doing poetry analyzation, a good, it's not ideal. It depends on what you're doing it for, but a good structure is start with the poem. The middle should be not the poem but close. And then your final bit should be away from the poem so that you can bring it all back together in your conclusion. This is how I All right, poetry analysis 101. This is the structure. You have your introductory paragraph, you have your pulling directly from the poem, you have your a little bit away, which is typically an argument. Um, Sometimes it can be a comparison to the poem and the life of the author. That's also a fair and valid point. Your last one should be a comparison, or not should be, but many times is a comparison of the poem to something similar to, but not of the poem. Um, so you wouldn't compare a poem about flowers to the flower itself. In that area, you could maybe do that in the above, but in that final one, that should be the furthest away. And then in your conclusion, you basically wrap it all up in a bow. You're gonna go, hey, you know how I just talked about this thing that is only vaguely tied? Here's how all of this ties all of it all back together, and here is why I think Ophelia is dumb. That's how that should go. When you're looking at prose, it's a very different structure, but for poetry, it's basically the same for every analysis. which sounds awful and sounds like I absolutely skated. But it's a fairly reliable way to make a paper for analyzing poetry, because it's two parts using your brain and one part using the poem itself, and that's the whole point. If you don't use the poem itself to analyze the poem, you're doing it wrong. It's like, so the things that come out of your brain are the introduction and the conclusion, and then parts of the other two, and then the rest of it should come from the poem. There you go. How to do poetry analysis 101. And the other fabulous thing is your analysis and somebody else's analysis can be complete opposites. You just have to be able to defend it. And it can't, like, actively contradict the poem. I should say that, too. If your poem is like, war is bad, you should not come to the conclusion that it supports war. It's like that. No. No. That's not how that works. How have I gotten into how to do poetry analysis? How did we get here? Oh, shoveling. That's how we got there. Alright, so with that masterclass in how to do a poetry analysis essay, I am going to call it for the night. I will see you in 2 weeks. We will be talking again about a reimagining, a sci-fi reimagining. And I hope you have a good night.